Kazuma Satou dies believing he is saving a girl's life. He pushes her out of the path of what he thinks is a speeding truck, and the effort kills him, not from impact, but from shock. It was a slow agricultural tractor that was never going to hit anyone. The most deflating available version of a heroic death, revealed to him afterward by a goddess who can barely keep a straight face. KonoSuba is not mocking the Isekai truck. It is identifying something about what the truck actually is. The specific vehicle doesn't matter. Something ended the protagonist before the story could begin. The most deflating available version of that something was precisely the point. Japan's Ministry of Health, Labor and Welfare tracks Karoshi, death by overwork, as an officially recognized cause of death. In fiscal 2024, they recorded 1,304 cases, the highest on record. 80 hours of overtime per month is the Karoshi line, the threshold at which overwork becomes strongly correlated with mortality. 1 in 5 Japanese workers currently sits at or above it. The truck is not a narrative convenience. It is the system arriving at a person after the system has finished with them, which is why the most precise isekai origin stories don't need a truck at all. In Farming Life in Another World, the protagonist Hiraku's origin story is not dramatic. He worked for a black company through his 20s and was in the hospital through his 30s. He dies from the accumulated physical consequence of what his job demanded, the kind of death that Japan's Ministry of Health tracks every year, that Japanese law has a specific name for, that families can file compensation claims over. There is no vehicle, no sudden impact, no moment of shock. There is just a body that ran out of what the system was taking, and a man who did not recognize the point at which that had already happened. A god meets him on the other side. His body is restored, and he is given a farming tool. When asked where he wants to go, he asks for a forest, not a kingdom, not an army. A forest to clear at his own pace, with his own hands, producing only what he decides to produce. He farms. He plants. He builds something that belongs to him. The isekai doesn't restore his health so he can fight harder. It restores it so he can stop. The crossing didn't give him power. It gave him back the self the system was in the process of ending. Japan also recognizes a companion term, Karojisatsu, for deaths where overwork, induced mental illness, becomes the final cause. Japanese law does not treat these as personal decisions, but as workplace fatalities, and families can file compensation claims. The World Health Organization formally recognized Karoshi syndrome in 2021. 1 in 5 workers at risk, a legal category for overwork-driven mental illness. A body count tracked annually. This is not a cultural quirk. It is a globally documented phenomenon with a name in 3 languages. The truck arrives into these conditions. It does not create them. The system creates them. The truck is the exit. But the truck is not the first mechanism Japan has had for this crossing. Kamikakushi, hidden by the gods. A centuries-old Japanese folk belief that people could disappear across the boundary between the human world and the divine. The boundary between these realms was understood as genuinely permeable, crossable. For centuries, it was the explanation given when someone simply did not come back. From the forest, from the mountains, from the city after dark. Not a tragedy without answers, but a crossing with a name. The person who vanished had not ceased to exist. They had been taken somewhere else. The Japanese title of Spirited Away is Sen to Chihiro no Kamikakushi. The word is in the title. Chihiro and her parents walk past ominous stone statues and crumbling structures at the entrance of a dark tunnel, silent markers that the ordinary world has already ended. They step through and everything changes. A Western viewer reads this as a fantasy setup. A Japanese viewer recognizes a contemporary Kamikakushi. The tunnel is not a narrative device. It is the ancient version of the same crossing the isekai genre has been depicting for decades. The truck did not invent this. It became the modern mechanism for something Japan has always understood. This is what makes the isekai death different from a Western hero's call to adventure. The Western hero is chosen and summoned. The isekai protagonist is released. The system had them. The crossing lets them go. When Kazuma finally clears his debt, He uses his knowledge of Japan to develop the Kotatsu in the New World, then slides underneath one with his head sticking out and refuses to do anything productive. His companions want adventure. He wants the Kotatsu. His entire death, the tractor, the shock, the humiliation, the goddess, the rebirth, leads to the Kotatsu. And that is the honest answer. Not power, not heroism, the right to stop. The slow life is not a subgenre. It is what people actually want when the requirements are removed. The Isekai does not give the protagonist extraordinary abilities so they can fight harder. It gives them the conditions in which they are allowed to exist without the system's demands on their time, their health, and their labor. The truck is not the point. The Kotatsu is the point. The Isekai truck isn't random. The conditions that produced it are 1,304 officially recognized deaths in a single year, an 80-hour overtime threshold with its own name, and centuries of folk belief that the exhausted can cross somewhere else. The system builds the conditions. The truck is just the door. What someone carries through that door is not power or status. It is the memory of a meal someone made for them out of love or guilt, or even something that couldn't be put into words but tasted like an apology. In Japan, that meal has a specific name and its own emotional language. That's Tuesday.